This is the godfather of cinema, and thanks for joining me for part 2 of my analysis of director Ingmar Bergman's 1974 film Scenes from a Marriage. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell notification for my future videos. This analysis will look at the underlying factors that led to Johan and Marianne's separation and divorce. This analysis will also unpack the psychological factors behind why they chose to marry and the role that their parents played in how they saw themselves and each other during their marriage.
So the whole concept's a complete fallacy.
During the interview with Mrs. Palm at the beginning of the film, Marianne claims that she is open to change and does not believe that people should feel pressured into being faithful to each other, as she cannot say for certain that she will remain faithful to Johan.
Okay.
She supports these claims later by telling Johan that she would sometimes like to take the days as they come to her, eat when she is hungry, sleep when she is sleepy, and make love to him when she feels like it, and not because she is obligated to do so because she is his wife. And yet, despite her telling Mrs. Palm that she is open to change, Marianne contradicts herself by also telling Mrs. Palm that her idea of happiness is being content and that she wishes that nothing in her life would ever change, unlike his wife's ambiguous claim that she is open to change. Johan admits that he is afraid of change. He is afraid to think about the future, and their close-knit families reminds him of the security he felt as a child, and he supports these claims as his wife supports her claims to Mrs. Palm in the interview by flaring up at Marianne's suggestion that they ride to work together in his car, despite the fact that they always drive to work in their own cars. He reminds her that he does not like surprises, and like Marianne's client named Mrs. Jacobi had told her in a divorce consultation, that her dull and predictable marriage had weakened her eyesight, sense of smell, hearing, and capacity to feel anything. Johan's senses have also been similarly weakened by his dull and predictable marriage to Marianne.
Okay.
Which leads to him abandoning her and their daughters to live with a 23-year-old woman because he needed a change. However, when he returns home to his wife 6 months later, after he is dumped by the younger woman he left his wife to be with, Marianne is a different woman. Like him, she needed change and a shock. As a single woman, Marianne was always passionate and outspoken.
That all of us must stand up together.
She was a rebel in college. She went against her parents' wishes by participating in the May Day parade, and she supported political causes. She was independent and confident in her abilities to take care of her children, have a career, and take care of her own home without a man's help. Then she married Johan and changed. The slippery slope to their codependency began with depression because Marianne had recently divorced her first husband and lost her unborn child, and Johan had gotten dumped by a girlfriend who happened to be a pop singer. Marianne and Johan seemed like a good match. On paper, they were successful in their careers, they made good money, and their parents got along well with each other. So it just made sense for them to get married, and over time they became settled into the routine of living together. thinking together, making love whether the other wanted to or not, visiting her parents for dinner every Sunday whether they wanted to or not, agreeing even when they disagreed, consulting with each other before making decisions, and lying to each other as well as to themselves. It got to a point where Marianne lost her personality and agency over her own thoughts and emotions to Johan and vice versa. And when he left her to be with his mistress, he had also taken her personality and feelings, which she had suppressed for the sake of his personality and feelings. However, their 6-month separation has restored Marianne's personality and self-respect. The separation has given her the emotional distance to see things objectively. Johan was never the problem. The problem was her mother brainwashing her to think, feel, and love everyone except herself. And even though she now realizes this, Marianne is not sure if she can ever be her own person again, as striving to be one with her husband had also destroyed Mrs. Jacobi's personality and emotional agency. Neither Marianne nor Johan had broken away from their parents to find themselves. It is possible that the child she aborted for him could have given them both a new way of seeing each other, as Johan's affair had given Marianne a new way of seeing herself from a perspective that she never could have attained if he had stayed with her and their marriage had remained the same without ever changing.
It's so obvious that these things stem from novelties.
Right. Okay.
In fact, in the interview at the beginning of the film, Johan and Marianne told Mrs. Palm that they were afraid of change when asked about the future. Marianne said that she wished that it would remain summer all of the time, and Johan said that he was afraid to even think about the future because he loves the security and comfort of his home, and being in regular contact with his family reminds him of how safe he felt as a child. He and Marianne had become comfortable to the point that they became comfortably numb, and this is why pain was the only way that Marianne could get back in touch with herself. But she welcomed, after years of feeling nothing and fearful of change. But how did she lose the independence she enjoyed prior to their relationship in the first place?
By the way, how long have you known about this?
Again, Johan helped Marianne heal after she lost her unborn child and divorced her first husband. She did not realize at that time that she was marrying Johan and her own mother as her lover. Johan was accepting and patient, but as her husband, Johan was condescending.
I've been waiting you for 1 whole week.
And expressed tacit disapproval whenever she tried to express the way that she honestly felt. Her mother controlled her the same way. Love and acceptance were carrots that her mother dangled in front of her. Sometimes they were weapons for stepping out of line, and at other times rewards for conforming. Over the course of their marriage, Johan went from being Marianne's husband to being the child she lost in her first marriage, and with the maternal instincts all mothers possess, Marianne made Johan's happiness and security the sole purpose of her existence. And when Johan left her, he took everything, all of the feelings, opinions, intellect, and capabilities that she aborted for him. In fact, their separation had the same profound effect on her mind, soul, and body that losing the unborn child had on her. She fell into a deep depression and painful withdrawal, but instead of finding another man to help her get over Johan, a crutch to help her through her depression, Marianne experienced something novel: pain.
It hurts her.
Her stomach ulcers, and her daughter Corinne coming down with a case of the measles displaced the pain of Johan leaving her. And by the time the ulcers and her daughter's measles went away, Marianne met a young doctor who helped her to close that painful chapter of Johan leaving her for good. It also didn't hurt that both of her daughters liked David. He could be very gentle and considerate and wild and rebellious at the same time. They weren't good in bed in the beginning. David was a demanding lover. He didn't care about her needs, and he was very selfish.
Hey, stop!
In a way that turned her on, because he reminded her of her daughter Corinne and herself as a little girl before her mother programmed her to care more about what people thought of her than what she thought of herself. For instance, in the film's second scene called The Art of Sweeping Things Under the Rug, Johan wants to send their daughters to stay with an aunt so that he and Marianne can spend some time alone. She likes his idea, but what will her mother and sister think about them kicking their daughters out of the house so that they could have some time alone? In another scene, Marianne agrees to have sex with Johan to keep him from being upset with her, even though she told him earlier that she did not feel like having sex with him. And even when Johan comes out with his affair with Paula, Marianne is more worried about their parents, daughters, friends, and maids' feelings than her own feelings about his affair. Sociologist Irving Goffman would call Marianne's behavior impression management due to her tendency to create distinct versions of herself to please different audiences. Remember, Marianne was programmed by her mother to seek love and acceptance over loving and accepting herself. But now all of that has changed because Marianne has had her heart broken and survived it all on her own. The old patterns of dependency that shackled her to her mother's approval, society's approval in childhood are broken, and she is now ready to be honest with herself and others, starting with David, her new boyfriend. She told him over the phone that she was having Johan over for dinner to talk. They have been separated for over a year. David calls Marianne back to see if she has sent Johan home yet, and she hasn't because Johan has fallen asleep at her place. She will send Johan home when he wakes up, but when he does wake up, they make love. And when David phones Marianne to see if she has gotten rid of Johan, she takes the phone into another room to tell him that she and Johan had made love. She tells David not to call her anymore, and she also leaves the door wide open to let Johan overhear her talking on the phone. Not because she still loves him, but to let him know that she is a new woman who is not afraid of being true to herself. And for the first time in years, she can be truthful with others without feeling guilty about it. Johan gets another shock from this new woman named Marianne, who walks and talks like his old wife. Divorce papers. She is going abroad and wants to get the papers signed and out of the way. Johan had promised to sign the papers quickly when she called him earlier, but when she arrives at his office, he breaks down. He does not want to sign the divorce papers because he is homesick and going downhill, because he's scared and almost homeless, and because he is bound to her and the security their home provided for him and their daughters prior to his affair. Unfortunately for Johan, his long list of woes have zero effect upon Marianne's resolve to divorce him. So to soften her up and buy more time, he pours her a glass of brandy and compliments her on how pretty she looks. Still getting no reaction from her, Johan starts coughing and complaining about his sore throat and his runny nose. He is also running a fever because he's been up all night depressed about them getting divorced. But his problems fall on deaf ears, not like the old days when she cared more about his well-being than her own well-being. She aborted their child for him. And when she gave birth to Corinne, he told her that he didn't want to make love to her anymore, and she told him that she understood. And when he told Marianne that he was having an affair with a younger woman, she concealed her pain and true feelings about his affair under a show of concern for him and his moral conflict after he told her how hard it was for him to be honest with her about his affair. That was the old, dishonest version of Marianne that had spoiled Johan, the enabling, self-sabotaging wife who cared and loved to a fault. But now it was her turn to be selfish, to break his heart, and to leave him in tears as he had left her in tears and heartbroken. Marianne has no sympathy for Johan now, and seeing him cry and beg felt good and a little sad, because she now saw how she must have looked to him when he left her with no further need for consideration or sympathy. This concludes part 2 of my 4-part analysis of director Ingmar Bergman's 1974 film Scenes from a Marriage. If you liked it, I'd appreciate you leaving a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Godfather of Cinema and hit the bell to receive a notification when I release part 3 of my analysis of this great film. I will see you soon.